Welcome, Michael. It's really nice to see you in Vienna and also in person.
Yes, it's nice to be here, Gerald. Thank you for inviting me.
You're a pioneer in the agile world for over 20 years right now. So you're a teacher of the teachers, you're a leader, and you teach also the leaders, bringing in various thinking from systemic approach, organizational development, leadership development, and also integral. What have you experienced over the last years? What are the changes, or what do we see?
Yeah. Well, a lot. I mean, when I started, which was actually in 2001, the year the manifesto was signed, I was part of the large-scale implementation of XP, actually, extreme programming, in a 50,000-person company, which was sort of insane. It was, in the days when they thought only very small teams for non-mission critical products could be done in an agile way, and that quickly, disappeared. But it was very limited what people, it was very edgy at that point. It was so new that it was totally skeptical and whatever. And then you had a more in the 2000s. There was more acceptance and experimenting with. So my next client in the mid 2000s was a big bank, and they were really pretty good at it. They didn't change everything about what they did, but we started bringing in. I started bringing in professional coaching as a concept. There was a concept of an agile coach, but it was sometimes very technical, which is a useful approach. But you're really getting into more organizational change and leadership issues than technical issues, and so that's the spot that I saw for myself, because I had training in psychotherapy and systemic work outside of agile. I had some background in technical stuff, but not as much as I had in human dynamics and system dynamics, really. And then there was became a obsession with professional coaching from a coaching point of view. I started the Agile Coaching Institute with Lisa Atkins, and we really tried to professionalize the field of agile coaching and broaden it to more than just agile practices. It's not about just frameworks, again, because you're doing organizational change. And then there was the advent of scaled frameworks, and then everybody started to get into the business. Big consulting firms that didn't really know that much about agile, but it was a lucrative money-making. And then it became very mainstream. Everybody wanted to get in on it, and that frankly degraded it. It took it from more pure roots, where it was really about the methodology and implementing it the way it was designed, to making lots of compromises. And then, now recently there's a questioning about, is this really the right approach? Is it dead? It's not, but it needs a rebirth in some way.
Oh yeah, you're saying, so the agile framework was really technical and oriented on the practice side.
Yeah.
So how was it to invent this shift?
It was fun. It was challenging, difficult at times, but people really got the difference, and that they were really good at doing teaching and mentoring kind of things, directive, content-oriented things. They weren't good at holding space, at facilitating things, at helping people, coaching them, not mentoring them, not giving them advice, but helping them go deeper into themselves, or understand what their own motivation was, or what their limitations were. So it was exciting times. So it was fun.
When you look back at this time, what has been your first moment where you recognize you get an impact, or how was it in the first moments?
Well, your question makes me think of this big transformation I was helping lead in the mid 2000s again, and realizing, it was a big campus where you could go to lots of team rooms, and this was pre everybody being remote, and everybody was co-located. They had all kinds of teams all over their campus, 9 buildings, thousands of people, and you could cruise by, a dozen team rooms in 20 minutes. And that was really interesting to see, all this change of, how they worked with space, how they worked with their process, the formation of the teams, all in one place, all at the same time. And then seeing the coaching groups and the transformation leaders, our goals for the organization, like to have 50% of the portfolio be agile by a certain time, was creating too much pressure, actually, and the organization wasn't able to absorb it. So, you can only change so far, so fast. Now I do very different things. I'm much more work with coach leaders and leadership teams rather than the frameworks themselves.
So how do you approach this at the moment when you said you have changed things and you're also working together in certain topics? So what has been the change, or how do you?
Well, in part, as I wrote my book, I got, part of the message of the book, a big part of it is that you need to change your mindset and who you are to be ready for something like this, especially the senior leadership team does, which is a big ask. It's hard to convince an organization that, they think they're just making a technology change, and so, IT should be able to handle it, but that's just not what happens. If you want a transformation, the leadership team is the first problem. They're the first constraint on what can change. Their thinking and their way of making sense of the world, their way of measuring it, is limiting in some sense. It was fine in a certain environment, but it needs to grow. It's almost like just creating more space in the organization, in a sense. So now it's focused on helping change agents, sometimes called agile coaches, some other things, transformational leaders, basically, helping them, train them about how to work this way, how to transform themselves, and then working with leadership teams in organizations that want to do a similar kind of a thing. So I don't, like now, I don't get into the frameworks really much at all. I mean, there's tons of people that know how to do that, and that's great. Being a transformative leader and being able to hold a transformational space is a different skill set. And that's what I try to hold in myself and try to work with other people to be able to do that.
To summarize it, for me, you're saying you really need to start at the leadership level in the leadership team.
Yeah, and that's not, you can't, there's sometimes resistance to that, and so you might do something else to sort of try an experiment or whatever. But if you're going to have an organizational transformation, you have to work with leadership, or you're not going to have one.
So we have a saying, you cannot delegate transformation.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yes, exactly. And also that it starts with you yourself, or your leadership colleagues, and you all's relationship with each other, and how honest you are with each other about difficulties, or your own limitations. So we have to get better at a lot of different kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from that perspective, I think it must be really also hard for leaders during that time to get to the adaptability, and also to change himself or herself. So what are the biggest obstacles there when working with leadership teams or leaders?
Probably the biggest obstacle is the commitment in the first place. When you get commitment and when people put themselves in, I mean, then obstacles will come up in the middle of the process for sure. But if it hasn't started, it hasn't started. So you've got to get people. You can't. You can try to convince them, but that doesn't work very well. There has to be some openness and some actual hunger in the other person to transform, to be willing to do that, to see the benefit, be willing to take a risk. And then, the lives that leaders lead these days, being totally overworked, having way too much stuff on their calendar, and you have to have dedicated time to this kind of growth work, where it's not, you have to be able to see it as truly an investment, not as just a task to be checked off or whatever.
So that means really making the self-development a big topic on your calendar, on your time.
Yes, yes, exactly, and knowing that it's not like just people use this term navel gazing, which is sort of like being a flower child or something, and meditating on the meaning of reality. And there's a little bit of that maybe, but it has to do with business results. We get work done in organizations through people, not through processes. And processes are part of it, but they're not, what's going to change things. So if you don't know how to relate to each other, both your colleagues and the people that report to you or work for you, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to get very far.
What do you use for the kickoff of this mindset change, also within the leadership team? Are there any special?
Well,
topics?
I mean, working with the leadership team, they need leadership feedback. So I use a tool called the Leadership Circle Profile. That's a really outstanding 360 instrument. And, people get very pointed feedback about what's really working in their leadership and the impact that it has and what's not. And they get an assessment, that shows them where they are in a huge database of 200,000 people and how their leadership ranks against other people. And comments, open-ended comments about your leadership. And then you start working with that, and you let people debrief that, take it in, talk to their peers about it, and then create a goal, a leadership change goal that, changes how they work.
We also have done this leadership circle profile feedback.
Yeah.
And
What'd you think?
it's really great because it gives you a lot of insights.
Yeah.
And from the topics, what I learned is that there are two main halves. One is the reactive side, and the other is the creative side.
Yeah.
And what I also learned, that it's really much more impactful to be more on the creative side, to lead people to be an effective leadership team.
Yeah. It's if you're not oriented toward, if you're oriented toward protecting yourself, keeping yourself safe, not changing, you're going to be reactive. You're going to be problem reactive. You focus on problems and try to remove the symptom, the pain of it, the anxiety of it. And if you're looking to create stuff, like not artistically create stuff, but you're creating outcomes in the organization, if that's where it's like playing to win instead of playing to not lose. That's a different mindset, right? How can I stay safe versus how can I create things that matter the most?
Especially in the time at the moment where we are, a lot of people really focusing on not to lose. And
it's scary times, and the world is quite chaotic right now.
And as you're saying about the grading topics, how do you see then dealing with complex problems within this area? As a lot of crises arise, which are really complex also to the company world. How do you see leaders approaching this?
Well, I see them sort of generally hunkering down, sort of trying to protect, cutting costs, cutting people, employing AI, and thinking that's going to be a silver bullet for them somehow. Usually not terribly effective. Actually, you can't plan your way out of complexity. The old way of thinking says that you can plan your way out of a difficult situation, and some situations, 60 years ago, you probably could, but now you can't. There's too much instantaneous feedback, too much, social media, people's demands at home and in their economy. It takes relaxing in a certain way and opening to a different kind of possibility. How complex systems work, for instance, which is a different logic than what we're used to. So
even when I think about AI, and as you said right now, everyone thinks, okay, we will get the work done with AI. Yeah. So the digital workforce will evolve, and someone needs to hold also the space for this topic, and it might be a complex issue then, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. What's the real interactivity of, that technology with the workforce, with the way people think, with how people feel? That's going to have consequences. And if we go into it blindly, it's going to be a problem.
We also recognize that what you said before, getting the feedback and working on really being relentless open in this direction also in the leadership team. So there is a lot of I need to open, and which is not designed for a small time frame of 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And, we need to be able to think differently. It's not just about, my self-relating. It's also like how we think about the problems that we have together, right? And the approaches that we use, which is sometimes not critiquing our method or our plan from a sort of a linear point of view, but like we practice this thing called inquiry, which is having creating a mindset that challenges assumptions on a deep level, and that creates a sort of a relaxation for people in the process of dealing with a wicked problem. That's a different way of thinking than what we're used to. We want to, like I say, we want to retract, we want to hunker down, we want to get tighter to control that fear and that difficulty, and that just doesn't work very well.
So you're saying just getting more relaxed on the one side, then you also the topics the success will come when you get more relaxed and not too much.
And utilizing like the being really strict about the hierarchy of the work is a constraining place usually. Being a little more like we don't know where the answer is going to come from. We don't know who might have it. How can we tap into crowdsourcing? How can we tap into different perspectives than we've ever thought before? Yeah.
So this is really a big question, because when you're starting and kicking off this process of getting in a transformative process, it's some kind of a top-down decision. It's so from that point of view, you need to have a top-down decision to do that, but then you open up the space in the direction of getting everyone heard.
Yeah. What can I ask you about your what was your experience? We just did some work together, and it was not just for you personally, but for your leadership team.
For my leadership team, I think it really opened up the space to talk honestly regarding the next topics. I recognize that with each process step, or which is each step we're doing, we get closer connected on the one side. we can have more open talks on the other side. So the leadership team does have its own, everyone has its own responsibility, of course, but we are talking on a general level and helping out each other on the responsibilities. For example, there are no silos anymore on the sales, marketing, or the service and delivery units. It's bringing together the complete sensing where we help each other. So, and I recognize that this really only could work out when you honestly talking about your truth, when you feedback what you feel. And this was a major shift for our team to not, as you said, be on reacting on the problem, but talking about what we could develop together. And from that perspective, it really brought up a broad common understanding. But I also think that really this is seen in the whole environment, in the whole company, where it's understandable that we all making senses together. So to say, what's going on? What's really going on? And also the reaction of certain or to certain topics. It's more the understanding of the other person, why this other person might react or on certain topics, because we know each other better. So talking about the leadership profile, we know what are the types of development for each and every of us, so we can support each other going into the development phase.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you all were very good clients. And you've been working at this already a long time.
Yeah,
You have had a commitment to your own leadership development, I mean, as an organization for several years, right?
Yeah, that was the topic we also started in kicking off this thing, because we're in a consulting business. So from that perspective, we see that we only can support our clients when we are developing further.
Yes.
So
yes, exactly. I mean, that's, Randolph and I were talking about last night about a different kind of consulting that's not needs-based or not, that's not the right word. That's not deficit-based, really. Constantly trying to just make more money, embed yourself in more client situations as a consultant. That doesn't serve the client well, and the client knows that on some level. They may not be conscious of it or admit it to themselves, but it doesn't. And if I can come from a surplus and from, I'm fulfilling my purpose, so you have to want what I offer. I'm not going to convince you of that, especially against what you think is good for you.
As you said, it doesn't need to be a push, it needs to be a pull. So the clients really need to understand or have a clear idea and then go into a common team. So this is also what we recognize.
Yes, then the process has integrity on both sides, right? It's a mutual fair exchange that's happening, and then that makes everybody feel okay.
So it's from that perspective, it's really good. Also talking honestly when you say really helping the client, because then you have to talk honestly about topics. It's not just about making money or selling the next hours. It's really helping the client also develop in their area.
Yeah, wherever that goes. It's both. There's a little bit of anxiety that comes up around it because of the uncertainty of it, and there's a lot of excitement, and it's very lively to be discovering where to go, not to have a well-worn roadmap that is a fake.
That's the thing. It's often coming up that so especially in the servicing side. So when you're doing consultancy, then in service and working together to predict the clear outcome, to say, I want to have this and that outcome in bits and pieces. So, but we recognize that when we talk about, as you said before, the needs of the company, where they need to go, then it's sometimes hard also to explain the process.
Yeah.
So, what is your take on that? So, how you want to explain when someone says, "Okay, what's happening?"
It's to some extent, like it's a similar issue when you're talking about a professional coaching engagement with just an individual. Let's say it's hard to talk about it; you have to do it to some extent. So having a way to do a little sample of the experience of it is a lot better than trying to convince them with PowerPoint. Because it's hard to talk about. You sort of have to experience it, especially to be really committed to it. We're starting working with internal cohorts of people to have not. I have traditionally done a lot of public training, not so much private training, but there's something about having a cohort of 20, 25 people in a medium to big organization who all have a process together like this, who have a coherence with each other in what we call a deliberately developmental environment, where development is the point, not just learning, but looking at how you think, how you construct the world. And that's where the leverage is to have a more complex kind of stage level of development.
So from that perspective, when you say a cohort about 20 to 25 people from a mid-sized company, this is then some kind of a proof point to the
yes, it can be that, and also it's a very powerful change force. It's one thing to train two coaches or transformation leaders. It's another thing to work with 25 and transform their relationship to each other, and them experiencing a different way of being with each other than they are used to. That is very bonding and very, it feels very safe, and it feels very, even though there's challenge in it, and it feels like you feel seen in a different kind of way. And transformational work is really hard, so it helps to have a community, not just a single person, right?
So how does this work then? So they have a 20 people cohort. What is the process, or how?
Well, the process starts with meeting with people and seeing who's really ready for it and who's committed to it. So you don't just randomly assign people or let anybody come in. You have to be selective about it, because not everybody's ready for that level of commitment, that level of vulnerability. So choosing people, something we do with the client, to get, so you get the right people on the bus. And then we have a process. We sometimes do the 360, the leadership circle. Sometimes we just do a self-assessment. We introduce some practices of deliberately seeing how we make sense of the world. And that starts to create a bond over time. We do an in-person retreat. Retreats are very powerful. And that can shift then the whole system, which it typically does. And most people have some level of breakthrough in that. And then you can keep going remotely, because you don't behavior doesn't change in a 2-week program, right? It takes 6 months or something as a general thinking, something like that, for a real new behavior to set in.
Yes, right. And then, so from our experience, and when you really make this on a broad basis, then you also can deal with crisis much better, with new topics. So when some new influence is coming in, then it's easier to talk to everyone and to get a new understanding of the new situation. And it's easier also to change ways how the company is doing, then it's easier than just top down and say we have to do something else. So from my perspective, it also has increased the adaptability of the whole company and of the whole system we're in.
Yeah. Sorry, increased what?
The adaptability
Yes.
to new situations.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because especially you do not know what's coming next. We have this huge AI topic at the moment where we see that a lot of work will be done by digital agents.
Right.
But on the other way, the complexity is increasing then. So we need to handle this one.
Yeah.
So thank you, Marty, for being here and the process we have gone through together. It has been overwhelming for the leadership team and myself really to get in the next development steps. What are your next topics?
Well, so I really appreciate working with your team, you and your team, and I really appreciate your commitment to your own growth and to serving the world. It was a great process. I love Vienna, and I really am glad to be here.
Thank you. So hopefully we can have another meetings in Vienna.
Yeah, great. Look forward to it.